Part 1. My name is Audrey Nichols, and the call that changed everything came at exactly 11:10 p.m. The screen flashed a name I never expected to see that late at night. Lily, emergency only. My heart stopped. Lily was only 8 years old. The moment I answered, all I could hear was rain, static, and a tiny trembling voice. "Auntie, I'm alone." A pause. Then words I'll never forget. "I'm so hungry. Please come get me." I was already grabbing my keys before the call ended. For an entire year, my parents had told me Lily was happy, safe, thriving. But children don't make emergency calls begging for food unless something is terribly wrong. And what I discovered 2 hours later inside that house would expose a secret my family had spent years hiding. A secret involving stolen money, and a little girl everyone thought nobody would protect. What they didn't know was this. I investigate financial fraud for a living, and every dollar leaves a trail, no matter how carefully someone hides it. I drove through the storm with the windshield wipers fighting to keep up. Most people describe me as calm, maybe too calm. I left home at 18 with almost nothing and built my forensic accounting business from scratch. Years of tracking missing money had taught me one important lesson. People lie. Numbers don't. But somewhere along that dark highway, a question kept repeating in my head. Why would an 8-year-old call me instead of her grandparents? Lily had been living with my parents in Hartsboro ever since her mother, Ruth, died in a car accident. Every time I asked to visit, there was always an excuse. She's adjusting. She needs stability. Too many visitors will confuse her. I wanted to believe them, because believing them was easier than imagining the alternative. The rain grew heavier as I crossed the county line. By then, a feeling deep in my stomach told me something was terribly wrong. I just didn't know how to. The front yard was dark. No porch light. No television glow through the curtains. Nothing. Rain dripped from my coat as I walked to the front door and knocked. No answer. I knocked again. Still nothing. Then I tried the handle. The door opened. A cold wave of air rolled out from inside the house. Not the normal kind of cold. The kind that comes from a home where nobody wants to spend money on heat. "Auntie." The voice came from the staircase. I turned and saw Lily sitting on the bottom step, barefoot, wearing a thin oversized t-shirt, holding her little pink flip phone with both hands. For a second neither of us moved. Then she smiled. Not because she was happy, because she was relieved, and somehow that hurt even more. I rushed over and wrapped my arms around her. She felt lighter than I remembered. Too light. "Where are Grandma and Grandpa?" I asked. She looked down. "They went out." "When?" "A long time ago." "Do they know you're alone?" She shrugged. That answer terrified me more than words could. I walked into the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. My stomach dropped. A half-empty carton of milk. A bottle of ketchup. A few slices of old bread. Nothing else. No fruit. No vegetables. No leftovers. Nothing. I checked the freezer. Almost empty. Then I opened the pantry door. It didn't move. Locked. I stared at the padlock hanging from the handle. A padlock. On a pantry. In a house with an 8-year-old child. "Lily," I asked carefully, "why is the pantry locked?" She hesitated, then answered softly. "Grandma says I eat too much." The words hit me like a punch. I looked at her. At her thin arms. At her oversized shirt. At the dark circles beneath her eyes. And suddenly everything started making sense. I searched the refrigerator again and managed to find 2 eggs. That was it. 2 eggs. I scrambled them while Lily sat quietly at the counter. Then she opened her backpack. From inside us. Part 3. My mother's laughter died instantly. "Audrey." The surprise in her voice lasted less than a second. Then it was replaced by irritation. "What are you doing here?" Behind her, my father stepped into the kitchen carrying shopping bags. The smell of cigarette smoke and expensive cologne followed him inside. Neither of them asked if Lily was okay. Neither asked why I was there. Their eyes went straight to the plate of scrambled eggs sitting in front of their granddaughter. And something changed. Something defensive. I stood slowly. I got a call. My mother glanced at Lily. A warning flashed across her face before disappearing. "A call," she repeated. "From Lily." Silence. Rain tapped against the windows. The kitchen suddenly felt much smaller. I folded my arms. Why was she home alone? Carol sighed dramatically. Oh, Audrey, honestly. We were only gone for a few hours. A few hours? I asked. She's 8. My father set the shopping bags on the counter. She's not a baby. His voice was flat, cold. The same tone he'd used my entire childhood whenever he wanted the conversation to end. But I wasn't a child anymore. I pointed toward the pantry. Why is it locked? Neither answered immediately. That told me everything. Finally, my mother shrugged. Because she snacks constantly. I stared at her. The refrigerator was nearly empty. The freezer was nearly empty. The child looked underfed. Yet somehow the problem was her appetite. Then I noticed the bags they brought home. Department store logos. Brand new purchases. Expensive purchases. My father followed my gaze. His jaw tightened. We work hard for our money. I looked at Lily, then back at him. Really? The word slipped out before I could stop it. My mother's eyes narrowed. What's that supposed to mean? I pointed at Lily's sleeves. Too short. At the worn sneakers beside the door. At the empty refrigerator. At the crackers she had hidden in her. Part 4. I wanted to take Lily with me that night. Every instinct screamed for it. Just grab her hand. Put her in the car. Drive away. But emotions don't win court cases. Evidence does. And legally, my parents were still her guardians. If I took her without permission, I'd become the problem instead of the solution. So I kissed the top of Lily's head. Told her I'd call tomorrow. Then I walked out into the rain. The entire drive home, I couldn't stop thinking about that kitchen. The locked pantry. The empty refrigerator. The luxury cruise brochure. None of it fit together. By the time I reached Bellhaven, it was nearly 2 in the morning. Most people would have gone to bed. I opened my laptop, made coffee, and started digging. That's what I do for a living. I follow money. Because money tells the truth long before people do. The first thing I reviewed was Lily's situation after her mother's death. Ruth had worked her entire adult life, which meant Lily qualified for survivor benefits. A monthly government payment intended for children who lose a working parent. The money existed for one reason: to support the child. Food, clothing, school supplies, medical care, housing, anything a growing child might need. Someone receives that money on the child's behalf. A representative payee. And I already knew who that person was. My mother, Audrey Nichols. I confirmed it within an hour. But that wasn't all. There was also a kinship care assistance payment. Another monthly benefit provided to relatives raising children who would otherwise enter foster care. 2 separate streams of money, both intended for Lily, both flowing directly into my parents' household. I leaned back in my chair, trying to do the math, because something wasn't adding up. A child receiving financial support shouldn't be rationing crackers from a plastic bag. A child receiving financial support shouldn't be wearing clothes 2 sizes too small. A child. Part 5. I decided to try the peaceful approach first. No lawyers. No agencies. No accusations. Just a simple conversation. On Sunday afternoon, I called my mother. When she answered, I kept my voice calm. I was thinking, I said. Maybe Lily could spend part of the summer with me. Silence. Then came the familiar sweetness in Carol's voice. The kind she used whenever she was about to say no. Why would she need that? Because she's been through a lot, I replied. And I'd like to help. The sweetness vanished. Almost instantly. She's perfectly fine here. I expected that answer. What I didn't expect was the threat that followed. If you keep interfering, Audrey, we'll move. I blinked. Move. New town. New school. Her voice hardened. And you won't know where. For several seconds neither of us spoke. Then I thanked her for her time and ended the call. Most people would hear that conversation and think it was only an argument. I heard something else. Fear. People with nothing to hide don't threaten to disappear. That evening, I sent a polite written request asking for information about Lily's benefit records. Nothing aggressive. Nothing legal. Just concern from an aunt. My father's reply arrived the next day. And it told me everything. Not because of what it said, because of what it didn't. There were no records attached. No explanations. No proof. Only anger. The message ended with a warning. If you contact any agency, you'll never see Lily again. I read it 3 times, then saved it in multiple locations. Because threats have a way of becoming evidence later. Days passed. I continued gathering information. School records revealed repeated absences. Teacher notes mentioned Lily asking for leftover snacks. Medical records showed missed appointments. No dentist visits. No routine checkups. Nothing dramatic. Nothing headline-worthy. Just a long trail of neglect. Then one evening Lily called. Like she. Part 6. For a moment neither of us spoke. I sat frozen at my kitchen table, gripping the phone so tightly my fingers hurt. On the other end of the line my brother was breathing hard. Waiting. Terrified of the answer. She's alive, I finally said. The sound that came through the phone wasn't relief. It was heartbreak. A grown man trying not to cry. Oh, thank God. I closed my eyes. Everything I'd been told for the last year suddenly felt fragile. Like a wall built from rotten wood. Daniel, I said carefully, what happened? There was a long silence. Then he began talking. And with every sentence, the story I'd believed started falling apart. After Ruth died, Daniel had collapsed emotionally. The grief hit him harder than anyone realized. He struggled with depression, alcohol, panic attacks. Eventually, he admitted he needed help and entered a treatment program. Not because he wanted to abandon Lily, because he was afraid of becoming a danger to himself. Our parents begged me to let them keep her temporarily, he said. They promised she'd be safe. I felt sick, because that wasn't the story I'd heard. Not even close. They told me you disappeared, I said quietly. Daniel laughed bitterly. A broken laugh. They told me you didn't want anything to do with us. My stomach dropped. The room suddenly felt smaller. They had told us opposite stories, kept us separated, made each of us believe the other had walked away. Why didn't you contact me? I asked. I tried. His answer came immediately. I called for months. I stared at the wall. Months. I sent letters. More silence. I sent money. That made me sit upright. What? Every month. I heard papers moving. Then Daniel read exact amounts. Transfers. Dates. Receipts. Thousands of dollars. All sent to my parents for Lily's care. I felt cold. Very cold. Because I already knew about the survivor benefits. And the kinship care payments. Now there was. Part 7. The following Saturday, I drove back to Hartsboro. Not to argue. Not to confront anyone. To observe. Sometimes people reveal the most when they believe nobody is looking. The town church was hosting a community potluck that afternoon. The kind of small-town event where everyone knows everyone else's business. Or at least thinks they do. I parked across the lot and watched. And within minutes I saw exactly what I expected. My mother was standing near the entrance surrounded by a circle of smiling people. Laughing. Accepting compliments. Playing the role she had perfected for years. The devoted grandmother. The selfless caretaker. The woman who had sacrificed everything to raise her granddaughter. Beside her stood my father. Quiet. Noble. Looking every bit like the hard-working grandfather everyone admired. And in the middle of it all stood Lily. Wearing a clean dress. Her hair neatly brushed. Looking like a child from a completely different household. A performance. That's what it was. A carefully prepared performance. One designed for public viewing. I watched woman after woman approach my mother. You two are saints. I don't know how you do it. That little girl is lucky to have you. My mother smiled modestly every single time. As if she couldn't possibly accept such praise. But she never corrected anyone either. Not once. Then I got out of my car. The moment they saw me, the atmosphere changed. My mother's smile froze. My father's expression darkened. Several relatives exchanged uncomfortable glances. I walked over carrying a shopping bag. Nothing expensive. Just groceries. And a winter coat in Lily's size. A real winter coat. The first thing Lily noticed was the coat. Her eyes widened immediately. I knelt beside her. Want to try it on? She nodded so fast it almost broke my heart. I helped her slip it over her shoulders. The sleeves reached her wrists perfectly. The coat zipped without strain. Part 8. After the church gathering, things started changing. Not quickly, not dramatically, but noticeably. Questions had been planted. And questions have a strange way of growing, especially in small towns. Within days, people who had spent years praising my parents began looking a little closer. A teacher who had stayed silent started paying attention. A neighbor who occasionally checked on Lily remembered things that suddenly didn't feel normal anymore. A church volunteer recalled seeing Lily asking if leftover food could be taken home. Individually, none of it seemed significant. Together, painted a picture. And pictures are hard to erase once people see them. Meanwhile, I was building something much stronger than rumors. Evidence. Daniel emailed me every record he had. Bank transfers. Money orders. Receipts. Years of them. I organized everything into folders. Every payment sent for Lily. Every date. Every amount. Every confirmation number. Then I added the survivor benefit information. The kinship care payments. School records. Medical records. Attendance reports. Teacher notes. What emerged was devastating. 3 separate sources of income intended for one child. Yet that same child lacked basic necessities. The numbers weren't just suspicious anymore. They were impossible to justify. One evening my attorney called. I'd hired her 3 weeks earlier after our first conversation. She had spent her career handling child welfare and custody cases. The kind of lawyer who didn't waste words. I've reviewed everything, she said. I waited. Then came the sentence I'd been hoping to hear. We have enough to file. For the first time in months, I allowed myself to breathe. Not because we had won. We were nowhere near winning. But because the fight had officially begun. The petition requested an emergency review of Lily's living conditions, a financial investigation into the use of her benefits, and an evaluation. Part 9. The courthouse wasn't impressive. Just an aging brick building with faded steps and a flag moving lazily in the morning wind. But that morning it felt like the center of the world. I arrived early. My attorney was already there. Daniel had flown in the night before. The first time I'd seen my brother in almost 2 years. He looked older. Tired. But sober. Steady. And when he asked about Lily, his first question wasn't whether we'd win. It was whether she was okay. That told me everything I needed to know. Across the hallway my parents arrived. Carol walked in wearing her church smile. Roy followed close behind. For anyone who didn't know them, they looked like loving grandparents unfairly dragged into court. That image lasted about 20 minutes. Then the hearing began. The judge reviewed the initial reports. School attendance records. Medical gaps. Statements from teachers. Documentation from community members. One by one, the concerns entered the official record. My parents' attorney argued that raising a child was expensive. That occasional hardships didn't equal neglect. And for a moment it seemed like the case might become a battle of opinions. Then the financial evidence appeared. And opinions stopped mattering. My attorney presented bank records. Transfers from Daniel. Monthly survivor benefits. Kinship care payments. Years of deposits. The judge studied the figures carefully. Then looked at my mother. Can you provide documentation showing how these funds were used for the child? The room became very quiet. Carol shifted in her seat. Her attorney spoke first. We may need additional time to gather records. The judge nodded. Then asked a simple question. Do those records currently exist? Nobody answered immediately. That silence was louder than any confession. Because people who keep records know where they are. People who don't keep records ask for time. The court ordered a full financial Part 10 final. The final hearing arrived on a cold Monday morning. By then nearly 3 months had passed since Lily's late-night phone call. 3 months of investigations. 3 months of documents. 3 months of truth slowly forcing its way into the light. The courtroom was packed. Relatives. Teachers. Neighbors. People who had heard pieces of the story and wanted to know how it ended. My parents sat at their table looking exhausted. For the first time in my life they looked uncertain. The judge entered. Everyone stood. And the final hearing began. The financial investigation was presented first. Page after page. Transaction after transaction. The evidence was overwhelming. Money intended for Lily had repeatedly been used elsewhere. Luxury purchases, casino withdrawals, vacation expenses, personal spending. Meanwhile, records showed unmet needs for the child those funds were supposed to support. No explanation could bridge that gap. Then came the surprise. A witness my attorney had kept confidential until the last possible moment. Lily's third-grade teacher. She walked calmly to the stand and took the oath. Then she began speaking. About the lunches. About the snacks. About Lily quietly asking if leftover food could be taken home. About oversized clothes and missed school days. Then she described something that made the entire courtroom silent. One afternoon, Lily had drawn a picture during class. A house. A locked door. And a little girl standing outside it. When the teacher asked what it meant, Lily answered, "That's where the food is." Nobody spoke after that. Not even my parents. Because there was nothing left to say. The truth had arrived. And it had arrived from the one person nobody could accuse of having an agenda. A teacher. A witness. Someone whose only concern was a child. Then the judge turned to Daniel. After months of review, background checks, treatment records, employment verification, and